Welcome back to our journey into the hidden realms of personal power. In our previous chapters, we explored the fundamental nature of thought energy and the way consciousness shapes reality. Now we dive deeper into perhaps the most crucial aspect of reclaiming your power, understanding and dismantling the invisible chains that have been forged around your mind since birth. The word occult simply means hidden, and what I'm about to share with you has been deliberately kept hidden from the masses for centuries, not because it's dangerous or evil, but because it's liberating. And those who benefit from your mental servitude have no interest in your liberation. Every day, from the moment you wake up until you close your eyes at night, you are bombarded with messages designed to keep you small, fearful, and dependent. These messages don't come with warning labels. They don't announce themselves as programming. Instead, they slip into your subconscious mind, like water seeping through cracks in a foundation, slowly but surely weakening the structure of your authentic self. The ancient mystery schools understood something that modern society has forgotten. The human mind is infinitely more powerful than we've been led to believe. They knew that once a person truly grasps the extent of their mental capabilities, they become ungovernable. They cease to be followers and become creators of their own destiny. Think about this for a moment. Why do you believe what you believe about yourself? Why do you accept certain limitations as absolute truth? When did you decide that some dreams were too big for someone like you? If you trace these beliefs back to their origins, you'll discover something startling. Most of them aren't even yours. From childhood, we're taught to color within the lines, to sit still, to not ask too many questions, to be realistic about our expectations. We're shown endless examples of failure and told these cautionary tales are meant to protect us. But protection from what? From discovering our true potential? From realizing that the very people warning us about reaching too high are often the ones who gave up on their own dreams. The mechanism of mental conditioning operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface level, we have direct programming through education systems, media, and social conditioning. You're told what success looks like, what happiness should feel like, what normal behavior is, and what you should aspire to become. These external voices become internalized, forming what psychologists call the superego, but which the ancients understood as the false self. Beneath this surface, programming lies something far more insidious: emotional conditioning. This is where your natural emotional responses are hijacked and redirected to serve purposes that have nothing to do with your well-being. Fear becomes the primary tool of control. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of being different, fear of standing out, fear of not fitting in. Consider how this works in practice. When you have an idea that excites you, that makes your heart race with possibility, what happens next? Almost immediately, a voice in your head begins cataloging all the reasons why it won't work. This voice sounds like yours, uses your internal dialogue, but it's not actually you speaking. It's the accumulated programming of everyone who ever told you to be careful, be realistic, be safe. This is the first great secret the mystery schools taught: learning to distinguish between your authentic voice and the chorus of conditioning that masquerades as rational thinking. Your authentic voice is the one that whispers about possibilities. It's the part of you that feels energized by challenges and sees obstacles as puzzles to solve rather than insurmountable walls. The conditioned voice, on the other hand, is always focused on why something can't be done. It speaks in absolutes: always, never, impossible, too risky, not for people like us. It uses your own memories against you, reminding you of past failures while conveniently forgetting past successes. It's the voice that keeps you playing small, because small feels safe. But here's what that voice doesn't want you to know. Safety is an illusion. The very attempt to avoid all risk guarantees the greatest risk of all, the risk of never truly living. Every person who has ever accomplished anything meaningful has had to silence that voice of false safety and step into the unknown. The ancients had a term for this process of breaking free from mental conditioning. They called it awakening. Not awakening in some mystical sense, but awakening to the reality of your own mental architecture. Once you can see the programs running in the background of your consciousness, you can begin to rewrite them. This rewriting process begins with radical self-honesty. You must be willing to examine your beliefs about yourself and your capabilities without the filter of false modesty or learned helplessness. Ask yourself, what would I attempt if I knew I could not fail? What dreams have I abandoned, not because they were impossible, but because I was told they were impractical? The conditioning system works by making the extraordinary seem impossible and the mediocre seem inevitable. It convinces you that success belongs to other people, people who are somehow fundamentally different from you. They're smarter, luckier, more connected, more talented, or they were born into better circumstances. This is perhaps the most damaging lie of all. The myth that greatness is reserved for others. Every person who has achieved something remarkable started exactly where you are now, with an idea and a choice. The choice to believe in possibility, despite the voices of limitation. The choice to act, despite uncertainty. The choice to persist, despite setbacks. But conditioning doesn't just limit your dreams, it also shapes your identity. You've been taught to define yourself by your job, your relationships, your possessions, your circumstances. These external markers become the prison walls of your self-concept. When any of these things change or are threatened, you experience an identity crisis because you've confused what you do or have with who you are. The ancient teachings reveal a profound truth. You are not your circumstances, your history, your mistakes, your successes, or your current situation. You are the consciousness that experiences all of these things. You are the awareness that can observe your own thoughts and choose which ones to follow. This is your true power, and it's the one power that no external authority can ever take away from you. Understanding this distinction between your essential self and your conditioned identity is liberating beyond measure. It means that no matter what has happened to you, no matter what mistakes you've made, no matter how stuck you feel right now, you have the power to choose differently in this moment. Your past does not determine your future unless you allow it to. The conditioning system works over time to convince you otherwise. It floods your mind with evidence of your limitations, real and imagined. It points to statistics that show how few people succeed in whatever you're attempting. It reminds you of your failures while minimizing your successes. It compares your internal struggles with other people's external presentations, making you feel like everyone else has figured out something you're missing. This constant barrage of limiting information serves a purpose. It keeps you focused on survival rather than growth, on problems rather than possibilities, on what you lack rather than what you possess. When your mental energy is consumed by fear and limitation, you have no bandwidth left for vision and creation. But here's the secret the ancients knew. Your attention is your most valuable resource, and whoever controls your attention controls your life. Right now, various forces are competing for your attention, trying to direct it toward consumption, distraction, worry, and conformity. Reclaiming control of your attention is the first step toward reclaiming your power. This is why meditation and mindfulness practices were central to the mystery school teachings. not because they were seeking some mystical experience, but because they understood that learning to direct your attention consciously is the foundation of all personal transformation. When you can choose what to focus on, you can choose what to create. The process of mental liberation isn't comfortable. It requires you to question everything you've been taught about yourself and your place in the world. It means acknowledging that some of the people you've trusted to guide you may have been passing on their own limitations rather than wisdom. It means taking full responsibility for your life, even the parts that feel like they happen to you rather than because of you. This responsibility isn't a burden. It's the key to freedom. When you accept that you are the author of your experience, you reclaim the power to edit the story. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become the creator of conditions. This shift in perspective changes everything. The conditioned mind rebels against this level of responsibility because it's easier to blame external factors for our limitations than to acknowledge our power to transcend them. But blame, even when it's justified, is a prison. It keeps you focused on the past rather than the present, on problems rather than solutions, on what others did to you rather than what you can do for yourself. True power begins when you stop asking why something happened to you and start asking what you're going to do about it now. This isn't about denying the reality of external challenges or pretending that everyone starts from the same place. It's about recognizing that regardless of your starting point, you have the power to choose your direction. The mystery schools taught that every challenge contains within it the seeds of equivalent opportunity. This isn't just positive thinking. It's recognition of a fundamental principle of growth. Every obstacle you encounter is also training for the strength you'll need at the next level of your development. Every setback contains information you need to succeed. Every failure is actually feedback, teaching you what doesn't work so you can discover what does. But accessing this hidden curriculum requires a shift in how you interpret your experiences. Instead of seeing problems as evidence of your limitations, you must learn to see them as evidence of your growing edges. The universe isn't testing you to see if you're worthy. It's training you to become who you need to be, to handle what you've asked for. This reframe changes everything about how you approach challenges. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "What is this preparing me for?" Instead of feeling victimized by difficulties, you begin to see them as customized training programs designed specifically for your development. This shift in perspective transforms obstacles from roadblocks into stepping stones. The ancients understood that consciousness itself is creative, not in some magical way, but in very practical terms. Your beliefs about what's possible directly influence what you notice, what opportunities you recognize, what risks you're willing to take, and how you interpret both success and failure. Change your beliefs about your capabilities, and you literally change your reality. This is why the conditioning system works so hard to limit your beliefs about yourself. It's not trying to protect you, it's trying to predict you. When your beliefs are constrained, your behavior becomes predictable, and predictable people are manageable people. They consume what they're supposed to consume, want what they're supposed to want, and never rock the boat of the status quo. But you weren't born to be manageable. You were born to be magnificent. The very fact that you're listening to these words means some part of you still remembers this truth, despite years of programming to the contrary. That remembering is your authentic self, calling you home to your real power. The journey back to authenticity requires courage, but not the kind of courage that rushes into battle. It requires the quiet courage to sit with uncertainty, to question your assumptions, to experiment with new ways of thinking and being. It requires the courage to disappoint people who have become comfortable with the small version of yourself you've been presenting to the world. This disappointment is inevitable because your growth will challenge others to examine their own limitations. When you refuse to play small, you hold up a mirror to everyone around you who has accepted smallness as their fate. Some will be inspired by your example and begin their own journey of expansion. Others will try to pull you back down to their level of comfort. The ancient teachings prepared students for this dynamic by explaining that not everyone will support your awakening to your true power. Those who benefit from your limitations, whether consciously or unconsciously, have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. They will use guilt, fear, logic, and even love to try to convince you to return to who you used to be. This is perhaps the most challenging aspect of personal transformation. Learning to love people without allowing them to limit you. It requires developing what the ancients called compassionate detachment, the ability to understand why others resist your growth without allowing their resistance to determine your choices. Remember, when people tell you to be realistic, they're not sharing universal truth. They're sharing the boundaries of their own imagination. When they warn you about the dangers of dreaming too big, they're projecting their own fears onto your possibilities. When they point out all the ways you might fail, they're revealing their own relationship with risk, not providing objective analysis of your situation. The most insidious form of limitation comes disguised as wisdom. Well-meaning people will tell you they're just trying to protect you from disappointment, as if disappointment were something to be avoided at all costs. But disappointment is simply the gap between expectation and reality, and that gap contains some of life's most valuable lessons. The ancients taught that disappointment is not the enemy of success, it's the pathway to mastery. Every expert in any field has experienced more disappointment than most people are willing to endure. They didn't succeed despite their failures. They succeeded because of what their failures taught them. Each disappointment refined their understanding, strengthened their resolve, and prepared them for the next level of challenge. This is why the conditioning system teaches you to avoid disappointment at all costs. If you're afraid to fail, you'll never attempt anything significant. If you never attempt anything significant, you'll never discover your true capabilities. It's a perfect system for keeping potential locked away where it can't threaten the established order. But potential is like a seed. It may lay dormant for years, but given the right conditions, it will eventually sprout and grow toward the light. Your job is to create those conditions by withdrawing your energy from the thoughts, beliefs, and activities that keep you small and redirecting it toward what makes you expand. This expansion begins in your mind, with your willingness to entertain possibilities that your conditioning says are unrealistic. It continues with small actions that move you in the direction of those possibilities, even when you can't see the entire path. It accelerates when you begin to associate with people who see potential where others see problems, who speak in terms of possibilities rather than limitations. The company you keep has an enormous influence on your consciousness. If you spend most of your time with people who complain about their circumstances rather than change them, who focus on problems rather than solutions, who see obstacles as permanent rather than temporary, their mental patterns will become yours. This isn't judgment. It's simply how consciousness works. We tend to harmonize with the dominant frequency of our environment. The ancients understood this principle and created mystery schools, partly to provide environments where expanded thinking was normal rather than exceptional. Being around others who were committed to growth and possibility made it easier to maintain those states of consciousness even when facing challenges. In today's world, you may need to consciously create your own mystery school by seeking out books, podcasts, seminars, and communities that support your expansion, rather than your contraction. This isn't about surrounding yourself with people who tell you what you want to hear. It's about surrounding yourself with people who challenge you to become who you're capable of being. The conditioning system will resist this shift toward growth-oriented influences. It will tell you that you're being unrealistic, that you're setting yourself up for disappointment, that you should be grateful for what you have, instead of always wanting more. But there's a difference between gratitude and complacency, between contentment and stagnation. True gratitude includes appreciation for your potential as well as your current circumstances. It recognizes that your ability to envision something greater than your present situation is itself a gift to be honored through action. Complacency, disguised as gratitude, uses appreciation as an excuse to avoid growth and contribution. The ancient teachings reveal that you have not just the right, but the responsibility to develop your full potential. Not because you took it to yourself, though you do, but because the world needs what you have to offer. Your unique combination of talents, experiences, perspectives, and passions exists for a reason. When you play small, you deprive the world of contributions that only you can make. This isn't hyperbole or motivation speak. Consider the countless innovations, works of art, acts of service, and moments of inspiration that never happened because someone chose safety over possibility. Think about the businesses that were never started, the books that were never written, the songs that were never sung, the problems that were never solved, because their potential creators were convinced to be realistic instead of revolutionary. Your dreams aren't just personal fantasies. They're glimpses of what wants to emerge through you. When you ignore them or dismiss them as impractical, you're not just limiting yourself. You're limiting what's possible for everyone whose life you might have touched through your full expression. This perspective transforms the pursuit of your potential from selfish ambition into service to something greater than yourself. It's no longer about what you can get from life, but about what you can give to life through the full development and expression of your capabilities. The shift from taking to giving, from surviving to serving, from consuming to creating, is at the heart of true empowerment. It moves you beyond the limitations of ego-driven goals into alignment with purposes that draw forth capabilities you didn't know you possessed. When your why is bigger than your what, obstacles become insignificant. When your purpose is clear, the path reveals itself. When your mission is meaningful, you find energy you didn't know you had and resources you didn't know existed. This is the alchemy the ancients spoke of, the transformation of base consciousness into golden awareness. But this transformation requires that you first acknowledge the full extent of your current conditioning. You must become aware of the voices in your head that aren't yours, the beliefs about yourself that you've inherited rather than earned, the fears that have been programmed into you by others' experiences rather than your own. This awareness isn't comfortable. It's much easier to remain unconscious of your conditioning because consciousness brings responsibility. Once you see the bars of your mental prison, you can no longer pretend they don't exist. Once you recognize that your limitations are largely self-imposed, you can no longer blame others for your lack of progress. But this discomfort is the price of freedom. It's the birth pains of your authentic self, emerging from the cocoon of conditioning. Like any birth, it's messy, uncertain, and sometimes painful. But also like any birth, it's ultimately joyful, because it brings forth new life, new possibilities, new ways of being in the world. The ancient mystery schools prepared students for this process by teaching them that resistance is normal and temporary. They knew that the conditioned mind would fight to maintain the familiar, even when the familiar was limiting. They taught techniques for moving through resistance rather than avoiding it, for embracing uncertainty rather than demanding guarantees. One of the most powerful of these techniques was learning to distinguish between comfort and safety. Comfort is often the enemy of growth because it keeps you in situations that feel familiar but don't serve your development. True safety, they taught, comes not from avoiding all risk, but from developing the confidence and capabilities to handle whatever challenges arise. This distinction changes everything about how you make decisions. Instead of asking, "Will this be comfortable?" you start asking, "Will this help me grow?" Instead of seeking guarantees, you develop tolerance for uncertainty. Instead of avoiding all possibility of failure, you become more interested in the person you'll become through facing challenges than in the outcomes of any particular attempt. The ancients called this orientation courage, but not the kind of courage that feels fearless. Real courage feels the fear and acts anyway. It acknowledges the uncertainty and proceeds anyway. It recognizes the possibility of failure and attempts anyway. This is the courage required to break free from conditioning and step into your authentic power. As you develop this courage, you'll notice that your relationship with failure begins to change. Instead of seeing it as evidence of your inadequacy, you'll start to see it as information about what doesn't work. Instead of taking it personally, you'll view it as part of the learning process. Instead of letting it stop you, you'll use it to adjust your approach and try again. This shift in how you interpret failure is crucial because it's impossible to grow without making mistakes. Every person who has mastered anything has failed more times than most people have tried. They didn't succeed despite their failures. They succeeded because they learned to extract value from every unsuccessful attempt. The conditioning system teaches the opposite. It presents failure as something to be avoided at all costs, as evidence of inadequacy, as reason to give up and accept limitations. This programming keeps most people playing so safely that they never discover what they're truly capable of achieving. But playing it safe is actually the riskiest strategy of all, because it guarantees you'll never reach your potential. It ensures that you'll reach the end of your life wondering what might have been, instead of celebrating what was accomplished. It trades the possibility of extraordinary achievement for the certainty of ordinary existence. The ancient teachings suggest that this trade-off isn't just personally limiting, it's spiritually impoverishing. They believe that each person comes into this world with unique gifts and purposes, and that failing to develop and express these gifts is a form of cosmic negligence. You're not just responsible to yourself for your growth. You're responsible to the larger tapestry of existence of which you're a part. This responsibility isn't a burden. It's an invitation to participate in something magnificent. When you step into your power and begin expressing your authentic gifts, you become a beacon that gives others permission to do the same. Your courage to live fully becomes contagious, inspiring others to break free from their own conditioning and limitations. This is how transformation spreads, not through preaching or convincing, but through example. When people see someone living with passion, purpose, and authentic power, it awakens something in them that remembers what's possible. Your personal liberation becomes a gift to everyone whose life you touch. The journey from conditioning to consciousness, from limitation to liberation, from fear to power, isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. It's the hero's journey that every great story tells, the call to adventure, the resistance to change, the meeting of mentors and allies, the facing of challenges, the transformation that occurs through trials, and the return with gifts to share with others. You are the hero of your own story. And right now, you're at the point where you must choose between the familiar world of limitation and the unknown world of possibility. The call to adventure is sounding in your heart. challenging you to step beyond the boundaries of who you think you are and discover who you're capable of becoming. The conditioning voices will try to talk you out of answering this call. They'll remind you of all the reasons why you should stay where you are, all the ways you might fail, all the people who might judge you for trying to rise above your current circumstances. But deep down, you know that playing small no longer serves you, if it ever did. The time has come to honor the greatness that lives within you, to nurture the dreams that have been whispering to you for years, to take the risks that growth requires, and to trust that the universe that gave you these dreams will also provide the means to achieve them. This is your moment of choice. You can continue to live within the limits that others have set for you. Or you can begin the magnificent journey of discovering what you're truly capable of when you remove those limits and step into your authentic power. The ancient teachings have shown you the way. The only question that remains is, will you take the first step